Great. Today is December 7th at 7 o'clock. This is the regular scheduled town council meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Next item on the agenda is roll call. Tody, would you mind calling the roll?
Counselor Scyther,
Here.
Counselor Fucci,
Here.
Counselor Shu,
Here.
Counselor Katarina. Here. Counselor Hamel,
Here.
Counselor McGee,
Here.
and Chairman Anderson.
Here.
All present, thank you.
All right. Item number 4 is general public comment. Are there any general public comments from the audience or online?
Good evening. My name is Rachel Hendrickson. I live on 2 Plantation Drive in Scarborough. I am at the end of my second full term on the Scarborough Planning Board, and I'd hope to continue for one final term. At the December 5th Appointments Committee, a public committee meeting that went out on YouTube, statements were made about my tenure and behavior that are categorically false. They impugned my integrity. A council member announced that I had met with developers. I never have. The councilor indicated that they had heard that from me. They had not. In reference to how I worked as chair, they accused me of knowing too much. It's difficult to respond to that other than to say that I do my homework, my due diligence, and bring an institutional memory to the board concerning prior applications. In the case of the meeting they referenced as an example of their contention that I did not run effective meetings, I was eliciting information about concerns a member of the public had brought to us. The accusations of the councilor are inaccurate and without merit. I worked all of my professional career on nonprofit boards as staff and as a member. I have never been before this been accused of dereliction of my office, of misfeasance, or of a violation of my oath of office. I have served this community every year since I moved to Scarborough. I was brought up believing in the ethic of giving back for all that this nation has given me. That is what I've been doing in Scarborough. To repeat, in all of the years I have served on the planning board, I have never engaged in ex parte discussions with any applicant. I am deeply offended and deeply saddened. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hendrickson. All right. Is there any other public comment? No? All right. Next item on the agenda is the minutes from the November 16th, 2022 Town Council meeting. Are there any adjustments to the minutes? No. Can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Proof.
Second.
Any discussion? No. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. All right, next item, item 6 is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? No. All right, item number 7 is items to be signed treasurer's warrants. I signed those prior to the meeting. And item number 8 is the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a number of things to report on tonight, though I'm not tasked with providing an official report on the Comfort Inn. I do have a couple of points I just want to raise kind of on an interim basis. My next scheduled kind of formal report out is at the December 21st meeting. At that point, I expect we'll have another updated room by room inspection and updated guest list. We'll report on compliance of conditions of the license and also really a final report on the status of the transition plan. I guess what I wanted to make you aware of tonight, since the last report 2 weeks ago, I am very pleased to say that upon a simple request to the Scarborough School District, 2 meals per day are being provided to all residents. Peter Esposito and certainly the superintendent's office were very quick to step up almost without question. And to the credit of the police department and our volunteers in policing, those meals are being delivered, timely every day at this point. So very pleased to have seen the support in that regard. Also, generally, I am aware that there's continued progress on the transition plan. This week, were made aware that the Maine Equal Justice folks have contacted the town and also the owner of the facility. They do represent three individuals, and they've indicated their intent to file seeking some sort of injunctive relief to stay or stop or reverse the eviction process. None of that has been filed in the courts, so I just mentioned that in passing. That may really not come as a great surprise, and that obviously may cause some delays in the final disposition. But again, I'll provide a much more detailed, complete report at your next meeting. A number of other items here just worth noting on the senior property tax stabilization program. This is something that I think we've talked about fairly consistently since it started up this fall. The due date for that program was December 1st. So we can say with certainty we have 850 eligible applicants in town. And our assessor has done some estimating what the estimated reimbursement from the state will be to cover the expected freezing of property tax, and for Scarborough alone, that's about $300,000. Interestingly, not surprisingly, I should say, MMA has requested that all towns provide a similar estimate so they can start to get a sense statewide what that fiscal note is. And that number for Scarborough alone, I think, equals about what the fiscal note established by the legislature for year one. So Councilor Caterina can certainly comment further, but this is probably priority number one for the Legislative Policy Committee to make sure that we've got a system that's workable for the state and for local government. I also want to mention something that's been in conversation, at least at the staff level, and I think on and off with past councils, have been the use of body cameras by our police department. It's something that's fairly common across the country, and there's a number of notable departments in Maine that have dash cams and body cams. And there's been any number of reasons we haven't advanced that. I think in part with the new chief, I think he's kind of breathed some new life into the conversation. But there are practical considerations in terms of video storage, and this material is obviously evidence. And so we want to have a full appreciation for what we're getting involved with. So the police department is actually demoing some selected officers anyway, body cameras over the next 2 or 3 weeks to get kind of a firsthand experience with them. And that's part of the evaluation process. I can't say for certain, but it could be as soon as the FY24 budget, there may be a capital request to advance this. So personally and professionally, I think it's very good practice and something that I've always conceptually been in support of, but I'm also mindful that there are some practical realities of managing a lot of new data that needs to be preserved and supplied upon request. So further reports for sure on that, but I want to make you aware that demonstration process is underway. I also want to mention that our town clerk is going to come over and assist me with having a vacancy in my executive assistance department. It really is given me an opportunity to consider what my needs are and really also what the organization's needs are. And it will come as no surprise to members of this council and a number in the public that Tody is an institution unto herself, just with the vast knowledge of council affairs, you name it. She's just a tremendous resource. And so I'm very pleased to have her working with me to help support my work. She's going to retain the position of town clerk, and we're excited. We're currently soliciting and recruiting for an assistant town clerk. The intention is to hire someone with the full hope and expectation this person will be Tody's successor when and if she wants to move from that position. The town clerk's position is far more important than the manager, frankly, and we need to have someone that's ready and capable to take over. And so I'm really pleased that we've been able to assemble I think a good transition plan that's going to support me in the meantime, but also prepare the organization for the future. Also, to mention to members of the public, I believe Councilor Hammer may be aware of this. Well, the council will be aware that you supplied some funds for us to do an assessment of the co-op pier, the commercial pier. It's about 10 years old and is showing some visible signs of wear. We did commission a formal assessment by a registered professional engineer. Not surprisingly, there were some cosmetic things on the newer part, the commercial pier. And all of this will help inform capital investments going forward. We were a bit surprised to hear that we call it the pedestrian pier, it's the old pier that exists kind of to the right, if you will, is in really hard shape. And I guess I shouldn't say I'm surprised. Visually, it seems like it needs some attention. But perhaps taking too much precaution, but we've chosen to close that pier until we can make some structural changes and improvements. So I think you'll see a request to do just that in next year's budget. In the meantime, I don't think the public will see too much of a drop off in ability to access the area. They can certainly continue to walk down the existing pier. So I just want to make you aware that that pier is closed now and will remain closed until we can make those improvements. Last week, as is customary, we did send out foreclosure notices in the state of Maine for unpaid real estate taxes. There's a extended foreclosure process. At the end of 18 months, there's an automatic foreclosure that occurs unless action is taken by this body. There's really nothing to report remarkably in that regard. In fact, our numbers are slightly down if I look at kind of historical averages. And the reality is most of them, upon receipt of this final notice, find a way, surprisingly or not surprisingly, to get paid. So very few that end up in the final foreclosure situation. But that foreclosure date is December 29th. It always happens mid to late December of the year. And you'll notice on your agenda this evening, order 22-115 is a product of that process. And there are certain properties in the past we've had as many as a dozen. This year, there's only one that we recommend that we do not. We recommend the council take action to waive that foreclosure because it's the property is not one that we necessarily want to own otherwise. So I just wanted you to be aware that those notices have gone out and the tax collector will be busy over the next several weeks working with those taxpayers. Finally, two kind of updates and housekeeping items. We are making arrangements to do some office reorganization here in Town Hall. Some more senior members of council may remember a prior capital improvement project for modifying some of the planning reception area downstairs. We've not actually advanced anything. So there are some limited monies in that regard, but there's a number of different changes we're proposing that really are low or no cost at all. And the first phase that we're looking at will involve the finance department, IT department, and HR. It's just kind of swapping space. It's just, we think it's gonna be a better use of this kind of shuffling or reshuffling. And we see an opportunity before our new finance director takes his seat to execute some of these things. So there'll be some activity over the next several weeks. Also, I've decided to replace the aerial photo that's out here in the lobby. I think it's vintage 2006. I think we can all appreciate this town has changed a bit since then. A day doesn't go by where I don't see someone standing there trying to find their street, only to realize that it doesn't exist on that map. So for fairly low cost, we've gone back to that same vendor. We'll have an updated aerial photo in that place. And lastly, just housekeeping for council. On your calendars, you should have an executive session with the Board of Education for next Thursday, around 7 o'clock or so. That may be postponed at this point. I don't know that there's much to report. And I've talked to the superintendent that I don't think it makes sense to convene the bodies, the Board of Ed and the council, unless we really have something tangible to report. So stay tuned. Either Chairman Anderson and myself will be in touch early next week about the scheduling. And lastly, GPCOG has their annual welcome and congrats reception. This is something they've done for 5 or 6 years. I know Councilor Hamel has gone 1 or 2 years in the past. This is for newly elected officials, and this year will be held at USM's Abramson Center. And they do request that you indicate that you're coming. I have that form if anyone's interested. I plan to be there, and certainly all of you are welcome if you wish. With that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Tom?
I just want to confirm that both the executive session with the school board and the GPCOG function are at the same time.
One's, the GPCOG is
the same
5:30 to 7:30. So
Gotcha.
theoretically you could make an appearance. But yes, you're right. They're both Thursday evening on the 15th. Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I know, Mr. Hall mentioned the Maine municipal's interest in the senior property tax freeze, and yes, that's right up there at the, top of the list of things that we're gonna work with the legislature on as to it's a sticky wicket, obviously, politically, because it's hard to give something to someone and say, oh, sorry, we're gonna take it back now because we didn't put like a means test on it or whatnot. So just stay tuned as to what the options will be. It could be that there may be some sort of like a homestead exemption type of a thing, but it's for seniors. That's one of the options. So just stay tuned and I'll keep you guys up on what's what.
All right, any other questions for Tom? Nope. All right, next item is order number 22-111, 7:00 PM, public hearing and action on the request for the following permits licenses. Special amusement permit from D. Tyler Anderson, Pat's Pizza located at 209 US Route 1, and food handler's license from Travis Turner, Schooner Seafood located at 21 Snow Canning Road. Tody, would you like to introduce this one?
These are both new requests. As of today, we had not heard any, we mailed out the letters to the abutters and there were no responses to it. And Travis Turner, he has a seafood business that's opening up at 21 Snow Canning Road. And they're both in compliance.
Any questions for Tody from the counselors before public comment? Nope. So I'm opening it up to the public. Is there anybody from the public in the room or on the phone who would like to make a comment? No? All right, I'm seeing no interest in public comment. Can I get a motion to put this on the floor?
So moved.
Second,
All right, discussion? All right, I'm seeing no discussion. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, there is no old business at this time, so moving on to new business. Order number 22-112, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendment to contract zone 5 proposed by Prime Mercedes-Benz on property located at 137 US Route 1 Scarborough. This is a property owner initiated request. Tom, would you mind setting it up?
Certainly, I know representatives from the applicant are here and certainly prepared to address the council as you wish. This matter was the subject of a number of discussions, workshops, and formally as part of the contract zone process. But quickly, by way of history, there was a joint hearing held. This was a joint meeting of both the town council and planning board back on September 21st. And by virtue of order 2288, the decision was to direct the applicant to continue through the process without amendment or changes. The planning board has taken the matter up and granted preliminary approval on November 1st. I believe minutes from the planning board have been provided to you for your review. This application actually constitutes the 5th amendment to the contract zone agreement. Really the reason for that, most of the amendments have been fairly de minimis in and of themselves. The contract zone requirements initially were so tightly regulated and worded that nearly they can't turn around without violating one provision or another. I mentioned that for all of us just to recall as considering other contract zones, we should not do them necessarily as rigidly as this one. That's a footnote just for the introduction. And true to form, this proposal is looking at about 2,200 square feet modification to the showroom area of the facility. Tonight constitutes the first reading. Should it be successful this evening, then it'll be scheduled for public hearing, second reading, and then ultimately they need to secure final site plan amendment approval from the planning board. So if pleases the council, the applicant is here and prepared to present or answer questions as you wish.
Yep. All right.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. My name is Burke Air. I'm a civil engineer representing Group 1 Automotive. And with me is Bryce Johnson. Bryce is our architect. And then Brandy Lawler is the general manager of the store, is also here if we have any operational questions. I don't expect you to because it's a pretty simple application. I recognize your faces. You may remember me from the joint meeting, and some of you may have watched the planning board meeting. it- Just as a refresher, two areas that are on this site plan are the addition. A little bit in the back and square off a little bit in the front. The only change, really the only text change in the contract amendment is the square footage of the building. So we've written in that the building will be allowed to go to 30,000 square feet. I don't have the exact number in my mind, but it's 27,000 a little bit. And this is about 2,200. So by going to 30, there's like a couple of hundred square feet of, when we do the final construction drawings, if it's a little bit bigger, or, I didn't want to get it down to too fine of a number. So it just around 30,000 seemed like a smart idea. So we wouldn't have to go back and make sure that we didn't have an extra square foot or two here or there. We haven't had any real major changes in our proposal, and we haven't had any real sticky issues at any of the meetings we've had thus far. So we're feeling pretty good about things. As far as the design team, we're in what we call a design development stage of the project, where we've done a lot of the design, but we haven't given it down to the final construction drawings, because we need to have these approvals before we go to that point. But we've been working on the drawings, and everything is still, no changes, not having any surprises that, oh, well, we didn't realize we're gonna have to do this. Some of those things happen usually as you're going through a design process. You don't usually start at the finish line. You have to kind of keep circling around. So as we've gone through that process, and we're pretty much through that process, we're still good with our proposal. There've been a couple of tiny tweaks to the plan. There's a vehicle entry door that we had going out sort of the catty corner, and now we've straightened it up to the side. It doesn't change the facade. It was just the glass storefront. The door has just moved a little bit. Those are really the only plan changes that I'm aware of since our first application. We had the joint hearing, and if I hadn't told you that, you probably never would pick it up on the elevation or the plans. But I just want to rest assured that we have spent a lot of time with the plan. We don't expect any major changes. It's going to be a good looking building, and I'll shut up and let you guys ask me any questions if you have some.
Are there any questions? No? All right, thank you. Or is there anyone else in the public who may want to comment on this? No? All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All right, discussion? Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I've seen Mr. Ayers a few times over the years, and I mean, they need to do what they need to do, and the public will be able to weigh in again, and so I feel confident moving this forward.
Anyone else? No? I agree with Counselor Katarina. I think the changes are pretty minimal. And I recall from our workshop how we talked about for applicants like this one, where this is like their 7th or 8th time coming
Oh, yeah.
forward, trying to figure out, is there a better process to deal with these types of applications, because it's pretty onerous. All right,
One thing we could do by way of process, we could combine a public hearing and second reading. Was that the intent already?
Oh, okay, good.
all right. If there's no more discussion, I'm gonna call the vote. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. All right, next item is order number 22-113. First reading and schedule a second reading on the request to approve the expenditure in the amount not to exceed $160,000 from the Land Acquisition Reserve Fund for the purpose of purchasing property located at 91 Burnham Road, located more specifically identified by the Scarborough Tax Assessor's Map R004, Lot 024, as recommended by the Parks and Conservation Land Board, and authorize the town manager to execute any and all documents as are necessary to protect the town's interests. I think we have the chair from the Parks and Conservation Land Board who'd like to introduce this. Suzanne?
Yes, Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Suzanne Foley Ferguson, and I'm the Chair of the Parks and Conservation Land Board. And Andrew Mackey, who is the Executive Director of the Scarborough Land Trust, is also here. And then our staff liaison, Todd Souza, also. So any budget questions would probably go to Andrew. But I don't know if you can put the map up or not. What we're asking the council to do is to approve an expenditure of $160,000 towards this purchase. The property is a 7.8 acre parcel that abuts the Fuller Farm. And it's, watch this, I have I can do on this one, I can point. Okay, so so on two sides, it points, or it's abuts, excuse me, the Fuller Farm, and on the other side, it's the Burnham Road. So this is the Broad Turn Road, and this is Burnham Road. And it's right near, this is a development called Dunn Estates. So the value of this property is really in adding to the Fuller Farm, which is 220 acres already. There is two small little streams that come in from, these are the wetlands, into here. And there's already a trail system, a private trail system that the land trust is pretty confident they can connect to the Fuller Farm. There's also an opportunity. One of the things long-term is we'd like to, here's Meserve Farm over here. I know it's across the road, but there are some utility easements in this area. And if we work with some landowners, there's a possibility, well, I say whoever, somebody works with the property owners to make a connection from Fuller Farm to Meserve Farm. So on this property, there's at least 4 vernal pools. And that was evidenced by Andrew walking it this spring and finding some wood frog eggs. We don't know if there's any endangered species, but the vernal pools are habitat for endangered species, and we do find them in Scarborough. And we think that the biggest value of this is the addition to Fuller Farm. Less and less large parcels are becoming available in this community. And so you're gonna see probably a lot more piecemeal to try to get big parcels connected to each other. And so I think that's about it. There's urgency to protect the land in this town. And I think you guys have probably heard all about it, but this is a really nice little property in and of itself at 7.8 acres. So that's pretty much all I have to say, unless you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Ferguson? Counselor Hamel?
I had a couple of questions. I know this is a key area of focus for us, and trying to offset the effects of development and making sure that we have adequate open space. I was wondering, Suzanne, if you could talk to a little bit to the connectivity aspects of this. I know that's been a focus of some of the committees, the Conservation Committee and also sustainability, to try to, get our high growth areas connected with, with parcels of land. So does this help in that regard, or sort of just fleshing out an existing parcel?
Well, one of the things that we do when we evaluate parcels is we give points, very specific points to connectivity. And this parcel did get some points for connectivity to a large parcel. It didn't get the most points that it could possibly get, but the problem or I shouldn't say a problem, the good thing about it is it does a few things. That first of all, it continues to protect part of the wetland area that's in here. The trails are not just important for humans, but also for habitat for specific animals. And so if we can connect the Fuller Farm to Meserve in some sort of way, there is going to be a benefit there. The larger a parcel of land, the more species it can probably hold, depending upon, some species are very, very specific to certain habitats, but other species, they need a wide range to move. As far as the trail system too, there is Is this the one with the snowmobile trail in it? No, this isn't. No. Fuller Farm has a snowmobile trail, so there's human trails as well. So I'm not sure what,
That's helpful. Thank
that's
you.
helpful. Okay.
I had another question on this. You did a nice job of showing a spreadsheet and how the various pieces fit together in terms of private funding as well as what's coming from the land bond fund and so forth. But I noticed Alger Hall was on there, so this may be a question for Tom. I mean, I don't see how Alger Hall fits as a, as a parcel having to do with, a land bond. So it's a commercial property on, Route 1. So how does that fit on that, on that bond?
So
And this,
We-
this for Tom.
question for Tom. Okay.
You can take it, Sue, if you like.
No, I thought you were from Tom.
I do have some comments about it, but
When the voters approved the bond, this bond was approved November 2019, excuse me, it was a total authorization of 2.5 million. The voters also indicate what the eligible uses of those funds are. Pardon me, I can start over. The bonding question was passed in November 2019 by the voters. It was 2.5 million. And it also indicated very clear instructions as to what was eligible for use of those funds. To your question, Counselor, one of the allowed uses is to preserve significant historic sites. And the past council determined that that property qualified in that category, if you will.
So I supported this when it came up. I was pretty vocal in my support of it, but I have to admit, I've been getting lots of questions on what are our plans for it and what's the current status. So, I mean, maybe not for this meeting, but at some point, I think it'd be good for us to get an idea of what's next and,
Please,
you know,
please do
in
that.
time. So.
Are there any other questions? Nick?
Not so much a question, but I just want to thank the people who have put this together. I think it's an excellent job. I don't want to talk too much about Fuller Farm because if you haven't been there, it's a nice little gem that's kind of quietly kept, although it is getting busier. And it's a beautiful parcel. So I think adding to it's a good move, and thank all the hard work that you guys have done.
All right, if there's no, Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add on that the more land we can conserve in Scarborough, the better. Particularly, we can talk all we want about wanting to make sure land is preserved, but unless we own it, there's no guarantee it's going to be preserved. So it needs to be either under the land trust or in some other fashion because of private property rights of folks. So I'm happy to see this, and I hope that as a council, we work to further getting properties. And I think it's great. This is I call it way out. It's way out my neck of the woods. Actually, it's western end of my neck of the woods. But I'm hoping that we can get some more land that's near the growth areas too. But I know that that's kind of a goal of like the Nonsuch River corridor and whatnot. So bring them forward, Suzanne.
It sounds like we're ready to move into discussion, so I'm gonna.
Oh, I'm
ask for a
sorry.
Motion.
So moved.
Unless,
Second.
all right, any discussion?
I'll just ditto.
Counselor Cucci?
Yeah, no, just thank you for bringing it forward again. I thought the package that you put together was very well done, articulate and clear. You made a good case for it. And just remind everybody that this isn't the end of the process. There's no guarantee that they'll finally close on this parcel.
Right.
This is a step in the process. So
Right.
I'm happy to lend my support to this. I think it looks like a great project.
Can I make a comment real quick, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One thing that we haven't had is a liaison, a town council liaison for our committee. So whoever wants to volunteer for us, we are a really good group, aren't we?
Yeah, we're gonna be covering that tonight.
Oh.
Yep,
All right.
comment.
Okay.
All right, any other comments for discussion?
I just want to be clear if I could. In this instance, the expectation is the Scarborough Land Trust will own the fee interest, own the property. But the town will have a conservation easement, and in doing so, will protect and provide for the public's interest going forward.
Do you mind coming up
Yeah.
to the mic?
And while he's coming up here, there's something I really forgot to say out loud that I really want to thank the owners. This is a bargain sale.
Yeah.
And because it's a bargain sale, that's a huge contribution from a private landowner. So thank you for that.
For the record, Andrew Mackey, Executive Director of the Scarborough Land Trust. Our office is at 7 Oak Hill Terrace, Scarborough. I have to first apologize to Sue because we finished this afternoon and sent it out to her, but I don't think she has seen it yet in her email. So I just wanted to inform council that this project is definitely moving forward. We're very close to closing in 2023, hopefully the first quarter. We did have a budget increase. So our budget went up $30,000. And that was due to one of the grants that we got for the project that requires very specific things that we have to do, and it increases cost. But I'll read the letter that I sent to Sue, if you don't mind. The Scarborough Land Trust is happy to notify the Parks and Conservation Land Board that we have exceeded our fundraising goals for our 91 Burnham Road project. We have worked diligently to secure additional funding for the project, saving valuable town funds while furthering the goal of conserving lands in Scarborough for the benefit of the community. Due to this diligence, we are reducing the amount of funding request from $160,000 to $140,000, a savings to the town of $20,000.
Nice.
So we're very pleased that we were able to do all that external fundraising. And so I hope you will consider that reduced request.
Now
Thank you.
keep it.
Yeah. What- Yeah. I just want to add, I'm very excited to see this and I'm very supportive of it. I know as a council, we keep talking about conservation. And I think hopefully next year, this will become a bigger topic for us to explore. So whatever the committee and the Scarborough Land Trust would like to do to partner with us to figure out how we can, maybe expedite this a little bit more to get as much conservation as we can. I think that's something that I would really like to see, at least as a counselor for next year, that we kind of have a very concerted partnership and focus on this. So, all right, with Counselor McGee.
Do you want an amendment or do you just want to leave it as the not to exceed?
Would you like to make?
Well, that's my question is, do we want to just, I think we were all satisfied at 160, but it says do not exceed 160. Do you want an amendment to up to 140 or do you want 160?
Would you
You
like to
do.
make a motion?
I will make a motion to amend to not to exceed $140,000.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? No? All those in favor? All right, so now we are revisiting the main motion, which is
As amended.
as amended. Any discussion? Counselor Hamel?
Yeah, and this, not to kind of drag this up, but I did have a thought. I didn't want to lose it. And this is maybe for the domain of the future finance committee, but I think in us looking at all this land, I think it would be useful for us also to take a look at the inventory of town-owned land and what the current assessed value is for that, and to consider that as possible source as well for expanding the acreage of protected land. Number one. Number two, I also hope there's an opportunity for us to discuss this with future finance committee, potentially making land purchases outright, out of expenditures as opposed to simply just bonding everything. So, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? No? All right, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. All right. On the.
That was the
amended
amended
motion.
Yeah, I have it. You did.
Yeah, you did.
All right, next up is order 22-114. Act on the request to rescind unused and unneeded bond indebtedness as noted in the attached order. Tom, I think you're going to set this one up.
Yes, I'm pleased to. From time to time, no set time, but on occasion, we do look at our books. Nearly every year, we do seek bonding authority from council. And for any number of reasons, and in fact, the reasons are noted on the order itself. we find ourselves in a position of not needing to actually borrow that money, whether the project came in under budget, there were other funding sources. In some cases, we have duplicate authorizations. So we'd like to kind of purge the system. The council's authority to borrow money doesn't expire, so we have to kind of keep track of it and keep carrying it. And when we know it's no longer necessary, we'd like to come back to you, and since you're the one that granted it, you're the one that can move it. So all told, there's about $944,000 in prior authorization over 36 different capital projects that we're asking to be rescinded. In practical and actual effect, this is kind of money on the books. There's no savings per se, but again, it's good housekeeping practice, and we look for your support.
Right. Any questions for Tom? No? Can I get a motion?
Second.
All those are, any discussion? Counselor Seifer?
I would just point out that, as Tom mentioned, there's no set procedure for performing this task. And so for the finance committee, as you work your way through the fiscal policy, this might be a place where you could just firm up some language and just codify that this is a task of the finance director or whoever to perform this task on an annual basis or whatever, just so that we know when to expect it, and then we don't have debt accruedness.
Counselor Tucci?
Yeah, I second that. This has been a bit of a pet peeve of mine for a number of years, and I guess thank Don's wife, Sue, sent a note when the library bond language was coming out and asked about the authorized but unissued portion of that statement, and just inquiring about what it related to, and it brought it back to the surface, and that's what got us here. So I'm excited that this is here. But this isn't the end. Town council authorizations for capital spending don't expire either. So there's, and it's not a huge risk. It's just yes, housekeeping. So I'd like to keep going down this direction. And that's up. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Counselor McGee?
So along those lines of housekeeping, this is a kind of a minimal amount in the scheme of things, but at some point, we should also be considering the bond ratio. I remember the presentation that we wanted to say at about 12 or 13% of bonded indebtedness for optimum borrowing and interest rates. So I just want to make sure that we don't clean too much out of a book and then put ourselves in line for maybe a higher interest rate or an unfavorable score from bond rating agencies. Just food for thought. This certainly wouldn't tip the scale, but if we get too aggressive with it, it may.
Right, any other items for discussion? No? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, next item is order number 22-115. Act on the request from the tax collector for a waiver of foreclosure on the following property: 332 Garnet Drive, map T002, lot 332, and authorize the town manager to sign the necessary documentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I alluded to this during my manager's report. This is one of the properties for which we've sent for final foreclosure notice to. And it is the singular property in that grouping that I recommend that the council take definitive action to waive the foreclosure. This is an older, much older mobile home. And frankly, rather than an asset, I would probably characterize it as a potential liability of the town that has little or no value. The lien does not go away. This simply waives the foreclosure so that the lien amount continues to remain with the property, and at some point, I expect the town will be satisfied.
Any questions for Tom? All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I support the manager whenever he brings forward something like this. We're not in the business of foreclosing on people's houses in order that we can throw them out or put them out on the street or whatever. So I'm very happy to see that we have this procedure in place. that allows us to do these, whatever you want, I forget what you call it, the waiver of the foreclosure. And I know I have, over the years I've served, have given a number of waivers just for that very reason. So, thank you.
Just if I could, to the counselor's point, there, beyond this, there is a policy that staff follows, which, in the event of a foreclosure, to Counselor Caterina's point, we're not in the business of owning people's property. So, we work, tirelessly with them, with repayment schedules, to return those properties to them. Not surprisingly, many people that find themselves in a foreclosure situation have some unique challenges and hardships, and we try to accommodate the best we can. And we have a very good track record of finding ways to ultimately return properties back to folks.
Mhm.
All right, any other discussion? No. All right, then I'm gonna call the vote. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, next item is order number 22-116. Act on the council chair appointment for 2023. So I can set this one up. So I did try and reach out to everybody prior to this and try and get feedback and understand what people's preferences were. And so thank you all for taking the time to meet with me and share. I hope most people are pleased generally with their assignments. And so, you know, I'm hoping that everybody finds these acceptable for next year. Jody, do I need to read it now? Or should I read it into the record now before we? Okay. So I'm gonna move that we put this on the floor.
I would just go, I make a motion to accept the following.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the following. Do you mind putting it back up? Oh, I'll take this. For Finance Committee, John Clucci as Chair with Don Hamel and Karen Shoup. Ordinance Committee, Nick McGee as Chair, April Scyther and Counselor Jean Marie Caterina. Communications, Counselor Scyther as Chair, Nick McGee and Jean Marie Caterina. Appointments and Negotiations Committee, Karen Shoup as Chair with Don Hamel and John Clucci. Rules and Policy Committee, Jean Marie Caterina as Chair with Karen Shoup and Nick McGee. Fair Hearing Authority with Don Hamel as Chair and John Clucci and April Scyther. And for liaison appointments, I have John Anderson continuing as the Board of Education Liaison on the School Building Committee on the Metro Coalition. Counselor Caterina with Ordinance, Rules and Policy, Communications, Historic Preservation, Firing Range, Housing Alliance, Senior Advisory Board, MMA Legislative Policy Committee. Karen Shoup, Appointments and Negotiations Chair, Rules and Policy, Finance, Conservation Commission, and PMAC. Community Services Rec Advisory Board, Planning Board, and Parks and Conservation Land Board with Suzanne. Counselor Scyther, Communications, Chair, Ordinance, Fair Hearing, Sustainability Committee, Eastern Trail Alliance, School Building Committee, Long Range Planning, Alternate. John Clucci, Finance Chair, Appointments and Negotiations, Fair Hearing, Chamber of Commerce, Long Range Planning Committee, Eco Maine, ADA Advisory Committee. Nick McGee as Ordinance Chair, Rules and Policy, Communications, Transportation Committee, SEDCO, Board of Assessment Review, GPCOG, PAX Policy and Library Trustees. And Don Hamel was Fair Hearing Chair, Appointments and Negotiations, Finance, Coastal Waters, Harbor Advisory Committee, Shellfish Conservation Commission, and Personnel Appeals Board. I think we've already covered the outside committee and boards. So with that, can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Hamel?
Yeah, two comments. Number one, I've been through several cycles of this, as says Jean Marie. And I personally want to thank John Anderson and my fellow counselors for the process that was pretty participative. You went to a great effort, I think, to try to get significant assignments for everybody, and not everybody get what they wanted, but hopefully everybody got something that is going to be meaningful and an opportunity to contribute. So I appreciate the way that was done.
Thank you.
And one other piece of advice: I don't ever volunteer for a committee that someone says has never met.
Like fair housing.
Any other discussion? Counselor Clucci?
Yeah, good job with this, John. There's no perfect science to trying to please everybody. I think you did as good as can be done, and I'm excited for this year. I look forward to working with everybody.
Great. Counselor McGee?
You increased my workload considerably.
Yeah. I tried to take from Counselor Scyther and.
I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And well done on trying to work with everyone.
Thank you. All right, well, with that, I'm gonna vote. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. All right, next item is non-action items, and we have no non-action items tonight. Item number 10, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. All right, well, Counselor Calucci.
Just, we're gonna have our kickoff finance committee meeting next Wednesday, the 14th at 5 o'clock. It should be pretty brief. We're gonna talk a little bit about the charge of the committee, some basics, a little bit about what individuals want to accomplish or focus on in finance this year. And set up our regular meeting time. So if anybody has any contributions they'd like to lend to us, to that conversation, feel free to come or send them to us. That's all.
All right. Counselor McGee.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask you to also contribute to this report, but we've been working on the GMO meeting with Karen Martin, Tom Hall, and Autumn Spear from planning. And we've just issued out a survey to boards and committees, chairs, to kind of get their feedback on how the GMO interacts with the work that they do here for the town. And whether or not they have any suggestions or feedback on what could make either a positive impact on the way we deal with the GMO as it relates to their committees. So we look forward to that feedback, and hopefully we'll begin crafting some real language to start kicking around as well. So that's my update for right now.
Great. And just to add to that particular topic, there may be some sort of forum that Karen Martin may host with developers to get feedback on the GMO before the holidays. So that's something that may come up later this month that, counselors are welcome to attend. I will say I attended the transportation committee where Autumn Spear facilitated the conversation with that committee on the GMO, and it was really great. So I would encourage you guys to look. I think we'll get a readout of all the feedback at some point, so everybody can kind of digest and see the feedback we're getting from the committees through their lens on what they think about the GMO. I think Long Range had their conversation, conservation,
excellent.
yeah.
I was just on the report.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're doing that is because we've gotten so much feedback from the public on growth, but we really have these excellent committees with very specific charges that I think they also represent the public, and trying to get them to participate based on their experience, based on their depth of knowledge of the town and the areas. We thought that would be another way to just supplement, our minds as we go through this process. So any other updates, Councilor Katarina?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, long range planning, we actually set aside our regular agenda so that we could do the GMO. So that will be helpful. Got some good feedback from folks. Also, as I mentioned, with Maine Municipal, we've been working as a committee. I work with all the other municipalities in the state that belong to Maine Municipal have, one person per town, plantation, city, whatever they may be. And it's so interesting to hear from other types of organized communities, what their feedback is and where they're coming from, and things that we think are an issue. They look at me like, you have no clue, lady, or vice versa, it could be. So as I mentioned, the big thing is the senior tax. The other real big one is the housing issue. Not only is that an issue here in Scarborough or in Southern Maine, it's an issue everywhere. It doesn't matter where, Aroostook County, Piscataquis County, whatever. It's like, what are we gonna do with folks who don't have shelter? So that's gonna be another big thing. And I was happy to see that the legislature is going to start a standing committee on housing. So hopefully they won't get bogged down in bureaucracy, but I know how it works up there, and that's what's gonna happen in the politics, but hopefully we'll see some good things come out of that. So.
Any other updates on standing committees and liaison reports? Counselor Hamel?
Yeah, I wanted to give an update on the appointments committee. So for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we did some things, some changes with process that were well intentioned and really didn't work very well. And I'm going to take responsibility for that. I think it put people in a difficult situation. We wanted to try to get a running jump on the first of the year, and in so doing, I think we put folks in a position that was not appropriate and was unfortunate. So prompted by additional feedback from the town manager, the assistant town manager, and the chair. I spent the past day and a half talking to people about how to push the reset button. So we're going to be having the first new appointments committee meeting under the guidance of the new chair with the accompaniment of John Clucci and myself. I've been on this committee as chair for 4 years. I'm looking forward to continuing as a contributing member, but I'm looking forward to their leadership. And there's some spade work I have to do and some fence mending that I personally need to do. And, we'll attend to that immediately following the meeting. But I did want to address that publicly. And any responsibility for how that happened is mine alone. The other thing I would say is that I want to try to give credit to Tody for how much work she has done on this over the past several years. We, just in this cycle alone, we have 115 positions on committees. Some 17 committees that include statutory committees and quasi judicial committees and so forth. So, in this cycle alone, we'll be filling close to 50 positions, 12 of them that are current vacancies and another 34 that are vacancies that are being created potentially by people's terms renewing or expiring. So there's a lot of moving pieces. This doesn't happen without Tody's help, and she makes it all possible. So special shout out and thanks to her. The final thing I'd like to say is that in order to protect the process and to be respectful of applicants, we actually will be doing the next process partly in executive session. This is one of the areas that qualify for executive session, and we'll be doing that, and we'll be reporting out with proposed appointments. And just a reminder again, the appointments committee does not make appointments. We make recommendations to the council, and it is actually the council who appoints committee members. So I did want to share that and thank everybody for the feedback, and onward and upward. Thank you.
Any other comments? So all I'll add is that in terms of future workshops, we may be having a workshop at the beginning of the new year around the comp plan implementation. So I think a lot of work has been done around that by the long range planning committee. And I figured going into our goal session that will be on Saturday, July 14th, it'll be good to have an idea of, or January 14th. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's late for me. We will be looking at that, and that may inform some thoughts that we might want to support as we go into goal setting. So I think it'll just be a good input for us to kind of get familiar with as we go into that conversation later in January. I've also been hearing a lot of interest or ideas floating around capital. And so I think there's buzz around the council wanting to have some sort of conversation. I don't know exactly what that conversation is. I know there may be some conversation in finance to kind of start, but I am getting or hearing that there's a desire to kind of take a step back, have a discussion around the school, the library, the community center, and really just get our heads together on where we may want to direct things. And so that could be something early next year that we may want to focus on. And I'm interested to get feedback from counselors as to what they would want to get out of something like that, or even just to kind of have a conversation on those big projects and just kind of share some ideas. So with that being said, I don't think I have anything else. I'm going to move on to item number 11, council member comments. Councilor Katarina.
Yeah, I want to personally thank Counselor Hamel for your statement. That will really tone down my council comments. I would be remiss. I mean, I was disappointed with what happened with appointments and negotiations the other evening. I watched the tape of it and I was like gobsmacked, to use an old Irish term. It was like, good heavens. And I absolutely hate to have any volunteer member of any boards or whatever feel like their integrity has been impugned, particularly in a public setting. And I think that we're gonna make progress on that. I'm happy to hear that you're talking about doing executive sessions, because I think that's way more appropriate for that. But I will say, just as an elected official and officially, since we do have a public record out there that has some statements in it that I think are not true, that I would like to see some record correction done, and I'm not sure how that happens. I don't know if a statement comes out from the committee or whomever, just saying, you know, whatever. So that's my own opinion. I will tell you that as chair of the policies committee, we will be looking at policies and procedures, not just at this council, this particular committee. But I do think that we need to look at this, and a good first step is the thing of going into executive session. Another thing that I had jotted down here was, you know, the difference between appointments for vacancies and then continuation of people who've been on committees. And it could be solved again, looking at you in the executive session type of thing. But you know, personally, I really hate to see us saying that we want to take people off from committees just because they've served for a long time. That's not too cool, but that's my opinion only. So I look forward to working with policies and procedures in the new year. And I also noticed that I went through and looked at policies and procedures again today, the whole thing, and I see some other things that we need to fix. I'm going, what? Didn't we update this? No, we didn't. So stay tuned. All right, so yeah, there was some harm, there was some foul. We're going to turn around. Mr. Hamel, Counselor Hamel statement was awesome. I appreciate it very, very much. But I would like to see that public record corrected, just because I think that it's the right thing to do. And that's it.
All right. Any other council member comments? No? All right, moving on to item 12 is adjournment. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.